What's your favorite way to enjoy chocolate? Do you love snapping off a piece of a smooth chocolate bar, letting it melt in your mouth, or stirring it into a warm cup of cocoa? No matter how you enjoy it, chocolate has a way of bringing comfort and happiness. But have you ever stopped to wonder how it's actually made? What starts as a simple cocoa bean on a distant farm goes through an entire transformation before it becomes the chocolate we all know. The process is far more than you might expect. It involves roasting, grinding, mixing, and refining to achieve that perfect taste and texture. Factories handle thousands of cocoa beans at a time, using high-speed machines and expert techniques to ensure every bar meets the same high standards. But how do they do it? What makes one chocolate bar smoother than another? And how do they maintain that rich, creamy flavor in every bite? In this video, we'll take you inside the chocolate-making process step by step. You'll see how cocoa beans are turned into liquid chocolate, how different ingredients come together to create unique flavors, and how factories ensure that each bar is packed and shipped perfectly. There's a lot more to it than you might think. If you love learning about how everyday products are made, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Stay subscribed. You will be the first to see when a new video drops. The manufacturing process of chocolate starts long before it reaches the factory. It starts in humid tropical regions where farmers grow and harvest the key ingredient, cocoa beans. These beans are what give chocolate its deep, rich flavor. But making high-quality chocolate isn't just about cocoa. Other ingredients like sugar, milk, and sometimes nuts or flavorings also play a big role. Each one is carefully sourced to ensure that every bar of chocolate tastes just right. The most important ingredient, cocoa, comes from the cacao tree. These trees grow best in warm, shaded areas near the equator in countries like Ivory Coast, Ghana, Ecuador, and Indonesia. Cocoa farming is hard work. The trees take years to mature and only produce fruit a couple of times a year. The cocoa pods, which are about the size of a football, grow directly on the trunks and branches of the tree. When they ripen, they turn from green to bright yellow, orange, or red, depending on the variety. Harvesting cocoa isn't as simple as picking fruit from a tree. Farmers use machetes to cut the ripe pods from the branches, being careful not to damage the tree. Once collected, the pods are split open to reveal the cocoa beans inside. Each pod contains about 30 to 50 beans, covered in a soft, white pulp. These beans don't taste like chocolate yet. At this stage, they have a bitter, almost sour flavor. To bring out the familiar chocolate taste, the beans go through fermentation. Farmers pile them up in shallow containers or spread them out under banana leaves, allowing them to sit for several days. The heat from fermentation helps develop the deep, rich flavors that make chocolate so distinct. This step is important. Without it, the beans wouldn't have the strong chocolate taste people love. After fermentation, the beans are spread out under the sun to dry. This process can take a week or more, depending on the weather. Farmers rake the beans regularly to make sure they dry evenly. If the beans hold too much moisture, they can spoil during shipping. Once they're fully dried, they're packed into large sacks and sent to chocolate factories around the world. Sugar is another key ingredient, adding sweetness and balancing the bitterness of the cocoa. The type of sugar used depends on where the chocolate is made. Some factories use cane sugar, which comes from tall, leafy plants grown in tropical regions like Brazil, India, and Thailand. The stalks are crushed to extract the juice, which is then boiled down into crystals. Other factories use sugar from sugar beets, which are grown in cooler climates. These beets are pulled from the ground, sliced into thin pieces, and processed to extract their natural sweetness. For milk chocolate, another essential ingredient is milk. Unlike fresh milk, which spoils quickly, factories use milk powder to keep the chocolate fresh for longer. This milk comes from dairy farms, where it is pasteurized to remove bacteria before being dried into a fine powder. The milk powder helps give chocolate its smooth, creamy texture. Some chocolate also contains extra ingredients like vanilla, nuts, or fruit. Vanilla adds a warm, slightly sweet aroma that enhances the chocolate's flavor. It comes from vanilla orchids, which grow in Madagascar, Mexico, and other tropical regions. The pods are carefully hand-pollinated, harvested, and dried, a process that takes months. Despite being used in small amounts, vanilla plays an important role in making chocolate taste rich and well-balanced. Nuts, such as almonds or hazelnuts, go through their own preparation before being added to chocolate. They're harvested, roasted, and sometimes crushed into small pieces or blended into a smooth paste before being mixed into the chocolate. Each of these ingredients must pass strict quality checks before they reach the factory. Cocoa beans are inspected for size, color, and aroma. If they're too small, too dry, or have an off-putting smell, they are rejected. Sugar and milk powder are tested to ensure they meet safety standards. Even the packaging materials, like wrappers and boxes, are checked to make sure they will keep the chocolate fresh during transport. Once the raw materials have been sourced, processed, and tested, they are ready for the next stage, turning them into smooth, rich chocolate. Factories use specialized machines to roast, grind, and mix the ingredients together, creating the perfect texture and taste. But how do they do it on such a massive scale? And what happens inside those machines to make sure every chocolate bar turns out just right? That's what the processing and manufacturing stage will show you. Once the raw ingredients arrive at the factory, they go through a series of processes to transform them into smooth, rich chocolate. The process is to bring out the best flavors, remove unwanted stuffs, and create the creamy texture that people love. But making chocolate on a large scale isn't as simple as mixing ingredients together. It takes heat, grinding, and hours of careful preparation to get it just right. The first major step is roasting the cocoa beans. This is where the flavor starts to develop. The beans are placed in large rotating drums and heated at controlled temperatures. The heat helps bring out the deep, rich chocolate taste while removing any unwanted sourness. The time and temperature must be carefully controlled because if the beans are roasted too long, they become burnt and bitter. If they're not roasted enough, the flavor stays weak and flat. The aim is to find the perfect balance so that the natural cocoa taste is at its best. Once the roasting is complete, the beans are sent through a machine that cracks them open and removes the outer shells. What's left inside are small, dark pieces called cocoa nibs. These nibs are where all the flavor and aroma come from. But at this stage, they're still rough and dry, far from the smooth chocolate people are used to. The next step is grinding. The cocoa nibs are placed into heavy-duty grinders that break them down into a thick, liquid paste called cocoa mass. This happens because cocoa beans contain natural fats known as cocoa butter. When the nibs are ground, the heat from the friction melts the fat, turning the solid nibs into a smooth, flowing liquid. This step is essential. Without it, chocolate would never have that melt-in-your-mouth feel. At this stage, the cocoa mass is rich and dark but still quite bitter. This is where mixing comes in. Depending on the type of chocolate being made, different ingredients are added. For dark chocolate, sugar is mixed in to balance the bitterness. For milk chocolate, milk powder is added to create a creamy, smooth texture. The exact amount of each ingredient varies, depending on the recipe. Can you imagine how many steps it takes to make sure each bar has the right mix of sweetness and creaminess? Factories use giant mixers to blend everything together evenly. These machines stir the ingredients for a set amount of time, making sure that the sugar, cocoa, and milk are fully combined. If the mixture isn't blended properly, the final product could end up with uneven flavors or textures. After mixing, the next step is refining. At this stage, the chocolate mixture is still slightly grainy, with tiny particles that can make it feel rough when eaten. To fix this, the mixture is passed through a machine called a roller mill. This machine presses the mixture through multiple sets of steel rollers, crushing the tiny particles until they are so small they can no longer be felt on the tongue. This is what gives chocolate its smooth, silky feel. Once the chocolate is refined, it moves on to an important process called conching. This is where the texture and taste are perfected. The chocolate mixture is placed into large tanks with rotating arms that stir it for hours, sometimes even days. This constant movement smooths out the mixture even further and allows any unwanted acidity to evaporate. It's during this stage that the chocolate develops its final flavor, rich, balanced, and free of any harsh bitterness. The final step before shaping is tempering. If you've ever noticed how chocolate bars have a glossy surface and snap cleanly when broken, that's because of this process. Tempering involves heating and cooling the chocolate in a controlled way to make sure the cocoa butter forms stable crystals. Without this step, chocolate could end up soft, dull, or prone to melting too quickly. At this point, the chocolate is finally ready to be poured into molds and shaped into bars, truffles, or other forms. But how do factories ensure that each piece looks perfect? And what happens next to get the chocolate wrapped and ready for stores? Once the chocolate has been roasted, ground, mixed, and refined, it's time to turn it into the bars, truffles, or treats people love. This is where the assembly line comes in. A fast-moving, highly organized system that ensures every piece of chocolate is shaped, cooled, and packed perfectly. But making thousands of chocolate bars in a single day is no simple task. Every step must be carefully timed, from pouring the chocolate into molds to wrapping it in its final packaging. The process begins with molding. The liquid chocolate, now smooth and ready, is pumped through pipes into machines that control the flow. The chocolate is poured into molds shaped like bars, pralines, or other treats. These molds move along a conveyor belt in a precise sequence. If you've ever snapped a chocolate bar into perfect squares, this is where those lines are formed. Some factories use vibrating tables to remove air bubbles, ensuring that each chocolate piece is solid and without holes. But chocolate doesn't harden instantly. It must be cooled at the right temperature to get the perfect texture. That's where the cooling tunnels come in. The molds pass through a long, temperature-controlled tunnel that gradually cools the chocolate. If the cooling is too fast, the chocolate might crack. If it's too slow, it could develop a dull, uneven surface. This step is necessary to making sure the chocolate has a smooth snap when broken and a glossy finish when unwrapped. Once the chocolate has solidified, it moves to the demolding stage. Special machines gently twist or tap the molds to release the chocolate pieces onto the conveyor belt. Workers and machines carefully check for any defects. If a piece is misshapen or broken, it is removed and sent back to be melted down and reused. For chocolates with fillings like caramel or hazelnut cream, there's an extra step before cooling. Instead of pouring solid chocolate into the mold, a thin layer of chocolate is spread along the inside first. Then, the filling is added before another layer of chocolate seals it shut. These filled chocolates require an extra level of care to ensure the filling stays in place and doesn't leak out. With the chocolate now formed and cooled, it's time for wrapping and packaging. This part of the process is a mix of high-speed machines and human oversight. Chocolate bars and pralines move down the conveyor belt towards wrapping machines. These machines cut and fold each wrapper around the chocolate in a matter of seconds. The wrappers are sealed using a light press or a small amount of heat to ensure freshness. Have you ever noticed how some chocolates have foil wrapping underneath a paper label? This isn't just for looks. The foil helps protect the chocolate from light and air, keeping it fresh for longer. High-end chocolates often use double wrapping to preserve their flavor, while mass-produced bars use plastic or recyclable materials to balance freshness with sustainability. One of the most interesting parts of the assembly line is the role of robotic arms and human workers. Robots handle repetitive tasks like moving chocolates from one conveyor belt to another, or placing them neatly into boxes. Their speed and accuracy make them ideal for handling thousands of chocolates every hour. However, human workers are still needed to check for mistakes, monitor machines, and ensure the chocolate meets quality standards. If something goes wrong, like a wrapper being misaligned or a piece breaking, workers step in to fix the issue. Factories also have machines that use cameras and sensors to inspect the chocolates before they're packed. These machines scan for size, shape, and surface quality, instantly removing any chocolates that don't meet the required standards. Even the weight of each chocolate bar is checked to ensure that every package contains the right amount. Once the chocolates are wrapped, they are placed into boxes, either for individual sale or bulk distribution. The boxes are stacked neatly and moved onto pallets, where they wait to be shipped out to stores. Some factories have automated systems that load these boxes directly onto trucks, cutting down on time and labor. But even after all this, the chocolates aren't ready to hit the shelves just yet. They must go through one final quality check before they leave the factory. Workers randomly inspect products to make sure they look and taste exactly as they should. If anything is off, adjustments are made before shipping. The assembly line is where everything finally comes together. It's a mix of fast-moving machines, human expertise, and precise timing. Whether it's a simple chocolate bar or a filled praline, each piece goes through multiple steps before it reaches store shelves. Note that every chocolate bar that reaches store shelves has gone through multiple layers of testing and inspection. Factories don't just produce chocolate and hope it turns out right. Every step is closely monitored to ensure that the texture, flavor, and appearance are exactly as they should be. Without these checks, chocolate could end up too hard, too soft, or even grainy. But how do factories catch mistakes before the product reaches consumers? And what happens if something goes wrong? Quality control starts long before the chocolate is packaged. Even before the cocoa beans arrive at the factory, suppliers inspect them for size, color, and aroma. If the beans are too small, too dry, or have an unusual smell, they are rejected. Factories only accept beans that meet their strict requirements, ensuring that the final product has a strong, balanced chocolate flavor. Once the beans arrive, the first real test happens during roasting. Workers and machines monitor the temperature carefully. If the beans roast for too long, they become burnt and bitter. If they are under-roasted, the chocolate won't have enough depth in its taste. Small samples from each roasted batch are tested before moving forward. If a problem is found, adjustments are made immediately to prevent an entire shipment from going to waste. Another key stage is during grinding and mixing. At this point, chocolate starts to take shape, but its texture isn't quite right yet. Machines grind the cocoa nibs into a thick paste, releasing the natural cocoa butter. If the grinding isn't done properly, the mixture can become too thick or too dry. Workers check the flow of the mixture to make sure it's smooth and rich. If needed, adjustments are made on the spot. Once the ingredients are fully blended, the chocolate undergoes refining and conching. This is where quality control becomes even more important. The goal is to create a silky texture, free of any graininess. Chocolate that is too rough on the tongue is rejected immediately. Samples are pulled from the machines at regular intervals and tested. Workers check the smoothness by rubbing a small amount between their fingers. If it doesn't feel right, the refining process is repeated until the texture meets the required standard. Here's an interesting question. What happens when a mistake is found? What if an entire batch of chocolate turns out too thick, too bitter, or too soft? Factories have systems in place to detect problems before they get too big. If an issue is detected early, only a small part of the production is stopped while adjustments are made. If the problem is more serious, the entire batch might be melted down and reprocessed to prevent waste. One of the final stages of quality control happens during tempering and molding. This is where chocolate gets its signature glossy finish and firm snap. If the temperature fluctuates too much, the cocoa butter inside the chocolate won't set correctly. This can cause the chocolate to look dull or develop a white, powdery surface known as fat bloom. To prevent this, factories use machines that heat and cool the chocolate in controlled stages. But even with these machines, human workers are there to double-check the results. They inspect random pieces, looking for any signs of dullness or uneven texture. Once the chocolate is shaped and cooled, it moves to the final inspection before packaging. This is where cameras, sensors, and human eyes work together. High-speed cameras scan each chocolate bar, checking for cracks, air bubbles, or irregular shapes. If the machine detects even the smallest flaw, the chocolate is removed from the line. Some issues, like a small imperfection in the shape, can be corrected, and those chocolates are sent back for remolding. Others, like pieces that are broken or too thin, are melted down and reused. But machines aren't the only ones inspecting the chocolate. Workers also perform regular taste tests. Small samples are taken from different points in the production line, and trained tasters check the flavor, texture, and aroma. They look for any changes that could affect the final product. If something seems off, adjustments are made right away to keep the chocolate at its best. Even after the chocolate is packaged, quality control doesn't stop. Randomly selected boxes are checked before being sent out for delivery. So what happens to the chocolate that doesn't meet quality standards? Not all of it goes to waste. Chocolates that are safe to eat but don't meet appearance standards may be repurposed into other products, like chocolate chips or baking chocolate. Others are sent back for reprocessing, melted down, and blended into new batches. This helps factories reduce waste while ensuring that only the best products make it to consumers. Factories go to great lengths to ensure that every bar of chocolate is as smooth, rich, and flavorful as it should be. Without these checks, the quality could vary, and customers would notice the difference. So the next time you enjoy a piece of chocolate, remember that it has been tested, tasted, and inspected at every stage to make sure it's just right. Once the chocolate has been shaped, cooled, and inspected, it's time for the final step: packaging and distribution. This part of the process is just as important as everything that came before it. Packaging doesn't just make the product look good on store shelves, it protects the chocolate, keeps it fresh, and ensures it reaches customers in perfect condition. The process begins as soon as the chocolates leave the assembly line. They move along conveyor belts toward high-speed wrapping machines. These machines are made to wrap thousands of chocolate bars, pralines, or boxed assortments in just minutes. The type of packaging used depends on the product. Some chocolates are wrapped in foil, while others are sealed in plastic or paper to maintain freshness. On the outside, the paper or plastic wrapper includes important details: brand logos, ingredient lists, expiration dates, and sometimes even fun facts or promotions. For boxed chocolates, the process is slightly different. Instead of individual wrappers, chocolates are placed into trays or compartments inside the box. This prevents them from shifting during transport and ensures they arrive in perfect shape. The boxes are then sealed using a thin layer of plastic film, which helps keep out moisture and maintain the chocolate's rich aroma. Once the chocolates are wrapped, they move to the labeling station. Here, machines print and attach labels with barcodes, batch numbers, and other important tracking details. This step allows factories and retailers to track each chocolate from production to sale, ensuring that any issues, such as damaged packaging or misprints, are quickly identified and corrected. But packaging isn't just about appearance and protection. It also plays a role in sustainability. In recent years, many chocolate companies have been working to reduce waste by using eco-friendly materials. Some brands have replaced plastic wrappers with biodegradable or recyclable alternatives. Others have started using thinner packaging to cut down on excess material. These small changes help reduce the environmental impact of mass production. Have you ever noticed a change in how your favorite chocolates are packaged? Maybe a brand switched from plastic trays to paper-based alternatives or added a recycling symbol to its wrapper. Share your thoughts in the comment. These efforts are part of a larger movement toward more sustainable packaging. Factories are constantly looking for ways to balance durability, cost, and environmental responsibility. Once the chocolates are packaged and labeled, they move to the boxing and palletizing stage. At this point, robotic arms take over, stacking wrapped chocolates into larger shipping boxes. These boxes are made from sturdy cardboard, designed to withstand long-distance transport without crushing the chocolates inside. Next, the boxes are loaded onto pallets, large wooden or plastic platforms that hold multiple boxes at once. Pallets allow factories to transport large quantities efficiently, whether by truck, ship, or plane. In fully automated factories, robots handle this entire process, lifting, stacking, and wrapping pallets with plastic film to keep everything secure. Once packed, the chocolates are ready for distribution. Depending on their destination, they might be stored in warehouses before being shipped to retailers. In some cases, chocolates need to be transported in temperature-controlled trucks to prevent melting, especially in hot climates. The final stop? Your local store. Once the chocolates arrive, workers unpack the boxes and arrange them neatly on shelves, ready to be picked up by customers. Next time you unwrap a chocolate bar, take a moment to think about how much work went into getting it to you. From the wrapping to the way it's stored and transported, every process is made to keep it fresh, protect its flavor, and make sure it reaches you in perfect condition. What do you think about modern chocolate packaging? Have you noticed any changes in how brands are reducing waste or improving sustainability? Let us know in the comments. Chocolate may seem like a simple treat, but behind every bar is a long process. From harvesting cocoa beans on farms to roasting, grinding, and mixing them into smooth chocolate, every step plays a role in creating the perfect sweet flavor. Machines and skilled workers work side by side to shape, cool, and wrap each piece, making sure it reaches stores fresh and ready to enjoy. The amount of care that goes into making chocolate is what makes it special. Every ingredient is carefully sourced. Every step is timed just right, and every bar is checked before it leaves the factory. It's a balance of tradition and modern technology, all working together to create something people love. Next time you unwrap a chocolate bar, think about everything that went into making it. The farmers who grew the cocoa, the workers who refined it, the machines that shaped it. All of these come together to bring you that smooth, rich taste in every bite. What do you think about the chocolate making process? Did anything surprise you? Let us know in the comments. And if you want to see how more of your favorite products are made, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification button so you won't miss out on any video of how everyday products we eat and use are produced in a factory. So stay tuned and keep anticipating our new video.